I always thought betrayal would come loudly, with shouting, slammed doors, maybe even the kind of argument neighbors gossip about for years. But the day my life split clean in two, there wasn't a single raised voice, just the soft hum of my son's car engine and the steady heartbeat of a woman, me, trying to believe she was still loved. It was my 67th birthday. Rain smeared across the windshield like someone was dragging gray paint over the world. Darren, my only child, kept both hands tight on the steering wheel while the wipers fought the storm. He hadn't wished me a happy birthday. Not once. Not even by accident. Instead, he said the same thing he'd been saying all morning. "Mama, I got a surprise for you." A surprise? I held on to that word like a lifeline, because God knows it had been years since Darren gave me anything that wasn't criticism, coldness, or excuses. But he was my baby, my only baby. A mother's heart will cling to hope, even while it's bleeding. We drove past the last gas station, past the last cluster of houses, past every familiar landmark. The deeper we went into the coastal marshlands of North Carolina, the tighter something curled inside my chest. "Darren, where are we going?" My voice trembled, though I tried to hide it. He didn't look at me. "Relax, Mama, you'll see." But it wasn't reassurance. It was dismissal. A tone that told me not to question him. A tone he'd learned from someone else. His wife, Tanya, whose sweetness evaporated the moment I handed over my bank card. We drove another 20 minutes before Darren slowed the car. The rain thinned, replaced by thick fog rolling across the road like ghosts. He turned onto a narrow dirt path I didn't recognize. My stomach nodded. "Darren, I don't think this road is safe." "No road is safe, Mama," he muttered. "Just let me do this. I'm trying to help you." Help me. If only I'd known then what those words actually meant. Finally, the car stopped. My heart stopped with it. We weren't in front of a hotel, not a restaurant, not even a little cottage getaway. Instead, we faced a rotten wooden shack leaning so far to one side it looked like it was trying to escape itself. Shingles missing, windows cracked, door hanging crooked like a broken jaw, in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by nothing but a dying yard and a mute, colorless sky. "This," Darren said, dropping the gear into park, "is your new home." I laughed at first, not because it was funny, but because my brain refused to process it. "My what?" He got out, walked around to the trunk, and popped it open. My old suitcase, the one with the torn zipper, sat inside. He grabbed it and tossed it onto the wet ground. "Mama, you're going to stay here now. It's quieter. It's cheaper. It's better for everybody." For everybody. Not for me. For him. For Tanya. For their endless hunger for more. My breath hitched. "Darren, sweetheart. No, I don't understand. Why here?" He rubbed a hand over his face, irritated. "You make everything so difficult, Mama. We got bills. We got a life. I can't have you in the house anymore. Tanya can't relax with you there. This is what's best." Best. That word tasted like dirt. "You're leaving me?" My voice cracked in a way I hadn't heard since my husband died. Darren didn't answer. He just put his keys in the ignition. Panic rose in my throat. "Darren, wait. At least stay until the storm passes. Darren, please." But he slammed the door shut. His tires spun mud as he backed away from me. No hug, no explanation, no birthday wish. Just a single sentence yelled out the window before he disappeared down the road. "This is your gift, Mama. Live here." And then, silence. The kind that presses on your lungs and makes your heartbeat sound like thunder. I stood in the rain, soaked to the bone, my suitcase bleeding its contents into the mud, abandoned by the child I raised alone, the only family I had left. But as I stared at that shack, as lightning cracked in the distance, something else came alive inside me. A warning, a whisper, a pull, because out of the corner of my eye in the house next door, the only other house on that road, a figure stepped behind a window curtain, watching me, studying me, waiting. My son thought he had discarded me. He had no idea who had just seen him do it. If you have never stood in front of a place that feels like it resents being alive, let me tell you, a house can glare at you. The shack Darren dumped me in front of looked like it had been holding its breath since the 1970s, waiting for the moment it could finally collapse and put itself out of its misery. Rainwater dripped steadily from the broken gutter, making a hollow plink, plink, plink against a rusted bucket on the porch. Each drop felt like a countdown. I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough for my suitcase to soak through and long enough for the shock in my body to start turning into something bitter and trembling. Finally, I took a step forward. Just one. My foot sank into the muddy ground like the earth itself wanted to swallow me whole. The shack's door was crooked, hanging on one hinge that squealed sharply when I pushed it open. The smell hit me first. Mold, mildew, and something older than time. My throat tightened. No electricity. No heat, no running water, just an overturned chair, a thin cot, and a table resting on 3 legs like it had already given up. This wasn't a gift. This was a graveyard for forgotten things. My heart throbbed painfully. How long had Darren planned this? How long had he looked at me and seen someone disposable? The storm outside thickened, wind howling around the shack like a warning. I shut the door, though it didn't shut all the way. Cold air still slipped in through cracks in the walls. For a moment, I thought about walking. Just walking until my legs gave out. But where would I go? I had no address to run to, no one to call. Every number I dialed earlier came back with the same message. The number you are trying to reach is unavailable. He had blocked me. My son. Blocked me like spam. A sob crawled its way up my throat, but I forced it back down. Crying wouldn't fix this. Crying wouldn't get me out of this place. I needed help. I needed someone. And then, as if the universe had been waiting for me to say that, the wind settled. Not fully, just enough for me to hear it. A voice, faint, almost swallowed by the storm, coming from the house next door, the same house where I'd seen the shadow move behind the curtain. I pressed my ear against the shack's wall, heart pounding. It wasn't yelling, not anger, not threat. It was a hum, soft singing, a melody too gentle for a place so cruel. Someone lived there, someone steady, someone unafraid of storms. My breath caught. What kind of person chooses to live out here? Why were they watching me? And most importantly, did they know Darren? Did they know why he brought me here? Lightning flashed. The hum stopped. The shadow in the next house shifted again, slow, deliberate, like the person was waiting for the right moment to step outside. That I felt the tremor in my bones, that instinct mothers have when something is about to change forever. I wiped my face, straightened my soggy cardigan, and stepped out into the rain. If I didn't go to them, I knew they would come to me, and when they did, I had no idea whether they were arriving as a savior or as another storm. The rain had slowed to a steady drizzle by the time I reached the house next door, a weather-beaten 2-story home with chipped blue paint and a porch that sagged slightly in the middle, like it carried too many secrets. A single warm light glowed behind the window, not bright, more like the soft flame of a candle kept alive out of habit. I took a breath, tucked my wet hair behind my ears, and climbed the 3 creaking steps up to the porch. My knuckles hovered over the door. For a second, fear curled around my lungs. What if whoever lived here was unfriendly or dangerous? What if Darren knew this person? What if this entire place was part of something he hadn't told me? But the alternative, staying alone in that cold shack, felt worse. So I knocked. A long pause. Then I heard shuffling from inside. Footsteps. Slow, steady, unhurried. Someone who did not panic. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing. The door opened halfway. An older man, maybe early 70s, stood in the doorway. Tall, broad shoulders, hair silver at the temples. He wore a flannel shirt and thick glasses that reflected the porch light. But it wasn't his size or age that struck me. It was the way he looked at me, like he had been expecting this exact moment. A softness flickered across his face. "Evelyn?" he said gently. My breath caught in my throat. I had never met this man in my life. "How do you know my name?" I whispered. He opened the door wider. "In this place? Word travels fast," he said. but I could tell that wasn't the full truth. His eyes held a familiarity I couldn't place, like someone recalling a distant memory right on the tip of their tongue. He stepped aside. "Come in out of the cold. You're drenched." Something in me hesitated. A lifetime of warnings about trusting strangers, but something deeper pushed me forward. Inside, the house was warm, smelling faintly of pine and old books. A kettle whistled softly in the kitchen. He motioned to a chair. "Sit. You look frozen." I sat slowly, my hands trembling. He poured me tea and set the cup down in front of me. I wrapped my fingers around the mug, grateful for its warmth. For a moment, he simply watched me, not judging, not rushing, just studying me like someone trying to solve a puzzle. Finally, I found my voice. "You said my name. How?" He exhaled, leaning back against the counter. "My name is Caleb Myers," he said. "I used to know someone, a long time ago, with your last name, Ward." My heart skipped. "My husband's name was Samuel Ward," I said. Caleb nodded slowly. "Yes, Samuel." A small, bittersweet smile tugged at his lips. "I knew him." My body went cold. You knew my husband? How?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he picked up a folded cloth from the table, set it gently beside me, and said, "Evelyn, I'm not sure how much you want to hear right now, especially after what your son just did to you." My pulse quickened. I hadn't told him a single thing, not about the shack, not about Darren, not about the abandonment. "How do you know what happened?" I breathed. Caleb looked toward the window, the one facing the shack. The curtains fluttered slightly with the breeze. "I saw," he said quietly. "I saw everything." My heart slammed against my ribs. You were watching?" His voice softened. "Evelyn, I wasn't watching you. I was watching him." A chill ran down my spine. Watching him? Why? Caleb stepped closer, resting a hand on the back of the chair across from me. "Your son has come here before," he said, "more than once, asking questions, looking around, talking to people." My blood ran ice cold. "What kind of questions?" I whispered. Caleb's jaw tightened. "About property, about land, about you, about whether anyone would notice if you were moved." I felt the room spin. He continued, "Evelyn, your son didn't bring you here today by accident." He paused. "He planned this." My breath broke. Planned it. Caleb leaned in, voice low and steady. "And that isn't the worst part." I gripped the sides of the chair. "What do you mean?" He looked at me with an expression I had only ever seen on doctors delivering terrible news. "There's something you need to see," he said. He walked to a drawer, opened it, and pulled out a stack of folded papers. But before he handed them to me, he said, "Evelyn, whatever Darren told you, he was doing for your own good. Whatever reason he gave for bringing you out here, it was a lie." My throat tightened. A deep primal instinct whispered in my ear, "This is only the beginning." And when Caleb unfolded the papers, my world, what was left of it, tilted beneath me. Caleb placed the stack of folded papers on the table as gently as if he were laying down a sleeping child. But the moment the edges touched the wood, something inside me jolted, a warning, a dread, a trembling knowledge that whatever lived inside those pages was about to change my life permanently. He slid them toward me. "Evelyn," he said softly, "before you look at anything, I need you to hear the truth fully. Not the version your son wants you to believe." My fingers hesitated inches from the papers. They looked harmless, thin, ordinary sheets, slightly creased, but they felt heavy, like they carried a weight greater than ink and signatures. What is all this?" I managed. Caleb inhaled slowly, then he sat down beside me, close enough that I could feel the steadiness in him, the way he'd practiced this moment in his head. "These are copies," he said. "I didn't take the originals, but I wanted you to see them for yourself." He tapped the top sheet. "This first one is a withdrawal slip." My stomach tightened. "Yes, I make withdrawals sometimes." "No," he interrupted gently. "You did not make this one." I opened the paper. My name sat at the top. My signature sat at the bottom. The amount withdrawn, $4,800,000, in one day. My heart stuttered. I never took out that much. I've never even written a slip that big. Caleb nodded. I know. I stared at the signature. It looked like mine, but not quite. Sharper loops, straighter lines, someone trying too hard. My breath tightened. Who did this? Caleb met my eyes. I think you already know. My hands shook as I set the paper down. He slid the next one over. A second withdrawal, then a third, then a transfer authorization, then a form for a credit line increase. All with my name, all with a version of my handwriting slightly wrong. My eyes burned. Caleb, I don't use credit lines. I don't take out loans. I never asked for any of this. He nodded again, his face sinking with sadness. I know, Evelyn. My hands hovered over the papers, as if touching them would infect me with the truth. Why would he do this? My voice cracked. Why would my own son? Caleb placed a steady hand on the table between us. There's more. He pulled the final paper from the bottom of the pile, much thicker, stamped, official-looking. I didn't want to show you this one first, he said quietly, but you need to see it. He slid it toward me. A loan agreement, a large one. $72,000, in my name. My eyes flooded with shock. No, I whispered. This can't be real. I didn't sign. I didn't apply. I didn't... But then I saw it. At the bottom. My signature. Or the forgery of it. Shaking, unsure hands. Heavy pressure where my pen strokes were always light. It was me, but not me. Caleb's voice cut through my shock. That document was filed 3 months ago. 3 months ago. Around the same time Tanya started talking to Darren about bigger plans. Around the same time he started locking doors. Around the same time he stopped letting me pick up my own mail. My pulse hammered in my ears. But why bring me here? I whispered. Why dump me in some shack like garbage? Why now? Caleb leaned back, eyes dimming with the weight of all he knew. Evelyn, he said, when someone wants to get rid of accountability, they often try to get rid of the person who still holds it. My stomach flipped. What are you implying? I asked, voice trembling. He didn't look away. I'm saying your son didn't just take your money. His voice lowered, thick with severity. He took your identity, your signature, your financial life. A coldness crawled across my arms, and based on what he asked around town, Caleb paused. I felt my heart stop. What did he ask? I whispered. He looked me dead in the eyes. He asked who to speak to. If he wanted to declare someone mentally unfit. The room went silent. Completely. Violently. My breath faltered. My vision dimmed around the edges. My hand tightened painfully around the chair. Oh my God, I choked out. He wanted to make it look like I couldn't handle my own life. Yes, Caleb said. And then he planned to take over everything. My world cracked apart in a single second. Everything I thought I knew about my son, every excuse I made for him, every he's stressed or he's just overwhelmed or he doesn't mean it, shattered like thin ice beneath a heavy step. My voice came out as a whisper. Caleb, what do I do now? He didn't miss a beat. You fight, Evelyn. I shook my head. I don't know how. He leaned in closer. Then I'll show you. My heart pounded, but before I could respond, before I could gather the pieces of myself scattered across that table, a sudden sound tore through the house, a car door slamming. Caleb's head snapped toward the window. My breath caught. He whispered, Evelyn, someone's here. And when he pulled back the curtain, my blood turned to ice. Because it wasn't the sheriff. It wasn't a neighbor. It was Darren, walking toward Caleb's porch. Fast, determined, with a look on his face I had never seen before, a look that told me he wasn't here to apologize. Caleb dropped the curtain so quickly the fabric snapped against the window frame. My heart was pounding so loudly I could barely hear anything else. "Stay behind me," he whispered, but I couldn't move. My legs were rooted to the floor, my fingers still clutching the forged documents, proof of everything I didn't want to believe. Through the thin walls, I heard Darren's footsteps on the gravel. Fast, heavy, angry. Not the steps of a man looking for his mother. The steps of a man trying to control a situation slipping out of his hands. A sharp knock rattled the door. "Open up!" Darren's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Caleb, I know she's in there." I flinched at the sound. There was no warmth in it, no hesitation, no guilt, just fury. Caleb stepped slowly toward the door, but didn't open it. "You have no business here, Darren," he called through the wood. "Go home." Darren scoffed so loudly it echoed. "That's my mother, Caleb, not yours. You don't get to hide her from me." My stomach twisted. Hide me? He wasn't here because he was worried. He wasn't even pretending to care. He was here because he was afraid he'd lost control. A second knock, this one harder, rattled the frame. "Mama," he shouted, "come out, we need to talk." My hands trembled, not from fear, from realization. He wasn't calling me Mama out of love. He was using the word like a leash. Caleb turned to me quietly. "You don't have to talk to him." But some part of me, the wounded part, the mother part, needed to look him in the eyes and see the truth for myself. I stepped forward. Caleb tensed. "Evelyn, it's okay," I whispered. "It's time." I opened the door. Rain mist blew into the entryway, cool against my face. Darren stood inches from me, hair damp, breath heavy, eyes boiling with frustration. But the moment he saw my expression, something flickered behind his anger. Not remorse, not sadness, fear. "Mama, it's home," he said, forcing a strained smile. "Why didn't you answer your phone? I know." I cut in quietly. His jaw twitched. "You know what?" I held up the forged loan document. This. For a moment, everything stilled. The wind. The rain. Even the look on Darren's face hardened like cement. "What's that?" he asked, though we both knew he recognized it instantly. "A loan," I said, voice trembling but steady. $72,000. In my name. With a signature I did not write. His eyes darted from the paper to me, then to Caleb, and suddenly his expression morphed from fear into something sharper. "Mama," he said softly, stepping closer, "you're confused. Those aren't real. Caleb is messing with your head. Stop." My voice was firmer than I'd ever heard it. He froze. "I am not confused," I said, "and I'm not blind. You took my money. You forged my name. You threw me away." His nostrils flared. "You don't understand how hard things have been for us," he snapped. "We needed help. You were slipping, Mama, forgetting things, mixing things up. I was trying to protect you." Caleb barked a low laugh. "Protect? By isolating her in a condemned shack?" Darren rounded on him. "Stay out of this!" But I stepped between them. "Darren," I said softly, "what else did you plan to take?" His eyes flashed with something raw. Not guilt. I knew guilt. I raised him. This wasn't guilt. This was panic. "You shouldn't be here," he muttered. "You were supposed to stay in that house until Tanya and I figured things out." Figured things out. About my money, my home, my future? A chill surged through my spine. He tried to reach for me. I stepped back. His voice cracked, the mask slipping. "Mama, please, don't make this harder than it needs to be." Harder for who? For him or for me? Behind him, another car engine growled up the road. Headlights swept across the yard at Sam. Tanya. Her silhouette stepped out with the purposeful stride of a woman who always believed the world should bend around her. She stormed toward us, raincoat flapping, eyes narrowed. "There you are," she hissed at Darren. "Do you have any idea what's happening? The bank froze everything. We need her to fix this." Then she saw me holding the documents. She stopped dead in her tracks, her expression drained of all color, then filled with something venomous. "Oh," Tanya said quietly. "So she knows." The wind whipped between us, cold and sharp. Darren swallowed hard. "Mama, you're going to come with us," he said, voice cracking, desperation leaking through. "You're going to fix this, sign whatever we need you to sign, and we're all going to move on." I stared at him, really stared at him, and finally saw him clearly. Not my baby. Not my boy. A grown man who would rather destroy me than admit what he'd done. The truth settled in my chest with terrifying clarity. "I'm not going anywhere with you," I whispered. And then, as if the universe wanted to underline the moment, red and blue lights flashed through the fog. A sheriff's car pulled into the yard. Darren spun around, stunned. "What the hell?" Caleb stepped beside me, steady and unshakable. "I made a call," he said. "You've done enough damage for one lifetime." Darren turned back to me, eyes wide, mouth trembling as the sheriff approached. "Mama, but what did you do?" I didn't look away. "What I should have done a long time ago." The sheriff stepped out of his vehicle with his hat low against the rain, each footstep heavy enough to silence every argument still clinging to the air. The flashing lights bathed the yard in waves of red and blue, colors that made Darren flinch and made Tanya's confidence evaporate. Sheriff Dalton was a tall man with thinning hair and the kind of stern patience that only came from decades of dealing with stubborn people in small towns. When his eyes landed on me, his expression softened. "Mrs. Ward?" he asked gently. "Are you all right?" I had no idea how to answer that, but I nodded. Darren rushed forward before the sheriff could say anything else. "Officer, this is all a misunderstanding. My mother's been having issues. She gets confused. We were just trying to help her." Dalton raised a hand, firm and calm. "That's enough," he said. "I already spoke with Mr. Myers on the phone. He shared some concerns." Tanya scoffed. "Concerns? Caleb has always hated Darren." "He's just trying to—" "Ma'am," Dalton interrupted without looking at her. "You'll get your turn." She looked outraged that anyone dared speak to her like that. The sheriff's attention turned to me again. "Mrs. Ward, I need to ask you something directly. Do you want to go with your son and daughter-in-law tonight?" The question landed on my chest like a brick. Darren's eyes widened. "Mama, of course you do. Come on, let's stop all this. You're cold, you're wet." "Mrs. Ward," Dalton repeated softly, "you choose. No pressure, no consequences. Just your decision." For the first time in months, maybe years, someone was giving me the right to choose. I took a breath. My voice didn't feel like it belonged to me when it finally came out. "No, I don't want to go with them." Darren's face cracked, not with hurt, with fury. "Mama, you don't understand what you're doing." Tanya threw her hands up. "She's doing this just to spite us. She owes us." "Owes you?" I repeated, stunned. "For what?" They both froze, realizing too late what Tanya had let slip. Sheriff Dalton crossed his arms. "Owes you for what exactly?" Silence. Then Darren muttered, She owes us cooperation. We've been handling all her bills, her affairs. We've been—" Caleb stepped forward from behind me. "And forging her signature, clearing her accounts, locking her away in a rotting shack?" Darren spun on him. "You don't know anything about our family." Dalton finally raised his voice. "Exactly, that's why we're going to take statements, all of you." He motioned to Darren and Tanya. "You two stay where I can see you." Then he turned to me. "Mrs. Ward, I'd like you to come with me to the car. It's warmer inside. We can talk privately there." Before I could move, Darren lunged forward. Not to hit me, but to grab the document still clutched in my hand. "No, no, 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 give me those—" Caleb blocked him immediately, planting himself between us like a wall. "You lay a finger on her," Caleb growled, "and I'll make damn sure you regret it." Darren snarled, "You think you know everything? You think you're some hero?" Caleb didn't blink. "I think you crossed a line you can't come back from." Tanya grabbed Darren's arm. "Stop it! You're making it worse!" He jerked away. "What do you expect me to do, Tanya? We're done if she goes through with this. Everything we planned, everything we needed." He stopped. Too late. Dalton's expression sharpened. "What exactly did you plan, Darren?" Darren's mouth snapped shut. He looked cornered, small, like a child caught with matches beside a burning shed. Dalton approached him slowly. "Son, I'm going to advise you to remain silent until we sort out what's going on here." Tanya sputtered. "Officer, you don't understand. We needed that money. We have debts, loans. Darren lost his job months ago and never told anyone. We thought—" I cut her off quietly. "You thought I was the easiest person to use." Neither of them spoke. The wind howled, rattling the porch railing. But the storm felt smaller compared to the one inside me. Sadness, anger, shock. And beneath all of that, a small ember of something new. Resolve. Dalton gently touched my elbow. "Mrs. Ward, let's get you warm. You don't have to face any of this alone." I nodded. And for the first time, Darren didn't step in my way. As the sheriff guided me toward the patrol car, I heard Darren behind me. His voice low, shaking, desperate. "Mama, don't do this, please." But I didn't turn around. Not this time. Because just beyond the patrol car's headlights, I noticed something else. A second vehicle pulling up the road. Dark, unmarked, moving slowly. Caleb followed my gaze, his brow furrowed. "Dalton?" he called quietly. The sheriff turned, and we all froze. Because the man stepping out of that vehicle was not law enforcement, not a neighbor, not someone I recognized. But Darren did. His face drained of all color. "Mama!" he whispered, terrified. "We need to go. Now, we need to go." Before he could finish, the stranger shut his car door and started walking toward us with a purpose that made every hair on my arm stand on end. The stranger's footsteps were slow, steady, and deliberate, the kind of walk that didn't belong to a passerby or a curious neighbor. He moved like a man who knew exactly where he was going and exactly why he'd come. The rain had dwindled to a mist, but somehow the air felt heavier as he approached. Sheriff Dalton shifted his stance, one hand subtly resting near his holster. "Evening," Dalton called out firmly. "Can I help you with something?" The man didn't answer. He kept walking until the porch light hit his face. A sharp jawline, clean-shaven, eyes cold and unreadable. Not old, not young. Somewhere in that dangerous middle where men stop bluffing and start meaning what they say. A man who'd been in enough fights to know how to end one quickly. Darren's breath hitched. His whole posture deflated, like someone had pulled the spine right out of him. No, he whispered. "This can't be happening." Tanya turned to him, confused and terrified. "Darren, who is that?" He didn't answer her. Instead, he stepped backward, away from the man, away from the conversation, away from everything. The stranger stopped a few feet away, eyes locked on Darren. His voice was calm, too calm. "Mr. Ward," he said, as if the sheriff, Caleb, Tanya, and I didn't exist. "We need to talk." Dalton stepped forward. "Sir, I need you to identify yourself before—" The stranger raised a hand, not aggressively, just enough to signal that he wasn't intimidated. "My name is Marcus Hale," he said smoothly, "and I'm here on business." Darren stumbled back another step. "Marcus, please." "Not here," Darren rasped. "Let's talk somewhere else." Marcus glanced at me, then at the documents clutched in my hand. His expression shifted, subtle, almost imperceptible but chilling. Recognition, interest. "You must be Mrs. Ward," he said politely. My pulse quickened. "Yes," I managed. He nodded once, thoughtfully. "As I expected." "Expected?" Sheriff Dalton cleared his throat. "Mr. Hale, I'm the sheriff here, and I need to know the nature of your—" "I represent a lender," Marcus said, cutting him off so smoothly it felt rehearsed. "Your local branch, but your paperwork was routed through my office." Paperwork. My chest tightened. He continued. "I've been trying to contact Mr. Ward and his wife for several weeks regarding a significant delinquency." Tanya blanched. "Delinquency? We made payments." "You made one," Marcus corrected. 6 weeks ago, and it bounced." I gripped the car door. Marcus's gaze returned to me. "Mrs. Ward, I'm afraid your name appears on several of the documents associated with the outstanding balance." I swallowed hard. "Forged documents," I said quietly. "I didn't sign any of them." Marcus studied me with unnerving calm. "I suspected as much," he said. "That's why I came myself." Dalton stepped between Marcus and me. "All right, that's enough," the sheriff said. "This is starting to sound criminal." Marcus's eyebrows lifted just slightly. "Oh, it's criminal," he said. "Very." Darren let out a shaky breath. "Marcus, please, we can fix this." "We just need time." "You had time," Marcus replied, "and you used it to commit fraud." Tanya grabbed Darren's arm. "You told me it was safe. You said they never check. You said—" "Quiet," Darren hissed. But it was too late. Every word she spilled was another nail in the coffin. Marcus turned his full attention to me, and for a moment the storm outside felt like nothing compared to the storm inside his gaze. "Mrs. Ward," he said, "I'm not here to collect anything from you. Not tonight." My breath trembled with relief, but then his tone shifted. Slower, colder. "I'm here to inform you that your son is facing multiple charges that will involve your name, your accounts, and potentially your property, unless you assert your rights immediately." Dalton nodded grimly. "She already told me she wants to file a report." Marcus's expression didn't change, but his voice dipped into something uglier. "Then I'd suggest we all move inside. The details are sensitive." Darren snapped. "No, we're not doing this. You can't just— Marcus, give me another chance. Please, I can get the money. We just need her to—" He pointed at me. "Sign a few forms." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Mrs. Ward will not be signing anything for you ever again." Tanya turned ghost white. Darren shook his head wildly, panic bubbling into rage. "This is your fault," he screamed at me. "If you had just trusted me, if you had just done what I asked, none of this would be happening." I stared at him. The boy I raised, the man he became, the stranger he turned into. Sadness washed over me, then something stronger. "I trusted you," I said softly, "and you used that trust to destroy me." Marcus stepped forward, his voice final and cold as stone. "Darren Ward, you need to come with us." Darren backed away like a trapped animal. "I'm not going anywhere," he hissed. "I'm not—" But the moment he turned to run, Dalton and Marcus moved faster. Dalton grabbed his arm. Marcus blocked his path. And for the first time in his life, Darren realized he had no one left to manipulate, no one left to fool, no one left to blame. He looked over his shoulder at me, rain streaking down his face like twisted tears. "Mama," he whispered, "don't let them take me, please." But I stayed silent, not out of cruelty, out of necessity. Because behind all the heartbreak, behind all the fear, behind all the betrayal, for the first time, I felt something solid beneath my feet, power, and I was not giving it back. They restrained Darren at the edge of the porch, not violently, not cruelly, but with the quiet efficiency of men who knew exactly what a panicking liar was capable of. Tanya hovered nearby, arms clutched around herself, lip trembling in a way that would have seemed sympathetic if she weren't staring at me instead of the mess she helped create. Rainwater dripped steadily from the porch roof, each drop a metronome to the unraveling of my old life. Sheriff Dalton removed his handcuffs, but didn't use them yet. He simply held them loosely at his side as if giving Darren one last chance to accept what was coming. "Darren," Dalton said in that low officer's voice that brooked no argument, "I'm detaining you while we sort this out." "You resist, and this turns into a whole different situation." Darren swallowed hard, panic and anger fighting for space in his chest. "I can explain," he insisted. "Mama, just tell them. Tell them you're confused. Tell them you don't want to press charges." I stepped forward, slow but steady, the mud sucking lightly at my shoes. "I'm not confused," I said, each word landing like a stone, "and I'm not protecting you from the consequences of your choices." His face twisted, hurt and rage fusing together. "You're my mother! And you stopped acting like my son the moment you saw me as a tool, not a person." The wind carried my words straight into the silence that followed. Something broke in him then. Not sorrow, but entitlement. "You owe me," he spat. After everything I've done for you." Caleb's voice cut through the air, sharp and grounded. "You did nothing for her," he said. "You drained her dry. You took advantage of a woman who would have given you her last breath if you'd only asked." Marcus stepped closer, expression unreadable but firm. "This conversation is over," he said to Darren. "You had multiple chances to correct your actions. Instead, you escalated them." Darren jerked against Dalton's hold. "I'm not going anywhere. She can fix this. She has to fix this." His voice cracked into something feral. "She's all we have." And that sentence hit me harder than all the accusations. Not because it was true, but because it revealed exactly how he saw me. Not as family, not as a mother, as a lifeline he'd fashioned into a rope and tightened around my own neck. Dalton turned to me gently. "Mrs. Ward, it's time for the official question." He paused. "This determines everything moving forward." The world suddenly went still. "What question?" I whispered. He took out his notepad, waterproof cover shining under the porch light. "Do you wish to file a formal statement and press charges for identity theft, financial fraud, and unlawful abandonment?" The air left my lungs. Pressed charges against my own son. I thought of the shack, the mold, the cold, his voice telling me to stay put in that rotting box as if I were inconvenient trash. I thought of my bank account, emptied without a word, of the forged signature, my name bent into a weapon, of his eyes. Not remorseful, not ashamed, only angry that he'd been caught. And for the first time in my life, I saw Darren not as a boy I raised, but as the man he chose to become. Marcus spoke softly beside Dalton. "Mrs. Ward, if you don't claim your rights, the debts fall on you. All of them. Every penny." My throat tightened. Caleb's hand hovered near my back, not touching, just there, a silent pillar behind me. Darren shook his head violently. "Mama, no, don't do this, please. Think about everything I've been through. Think about what?" I whispered. "How hard it was to steal from me? To lie? To leave me in that shack alone?" His face twisted. "I didn't leave you. I gave you a place to stay until things calmed down." Caleb let out a humorless laugh. "That shack hasn't had working electricity in 5 years. Something shifted inside me. Not anger, not sadness, but clarity. I straightened my shoulders, looked directly at Dalton, and said the words I never imagined I'd say in my lifetime. "Yes, I want to press charges." Darren's knees nearly buckled. Tanya gasped. Dalton nodded solemnly. Marcus exhaled, a quiet sound of finality. Caleb placed one hand gently on my shoulder, warm and steady. Dalton spoke firmly. "Darren Ward, you're under arrest." But Darren erupted. No, you can't do this." He lunged, not at the sheriff, not at Marcus, at me. In one movement, fast, desperate, reckless, he reached his arm out to grab my wrist, fingers stretching toward me like talons of a drowning man. But before he touched me, Caleb moved. Quicker than I thought a man his age could move. He stepped in front of me, shielding me completely as Dalton and Marcus tackled Darren from both sides. A yell tore from Darren's throat. Anger, frustration, betrayal, as they forced his arms behind his back and clamped the cuffs around his wrists. Rain soaked his hair as he knelt in the mud, and he looked up at me, eyes wild, voice cracking. "Mama, how could you?" A tear slid down my cheek. Not from guilt, from grief. "Because you left me no choice," I whispered. Dalton pulled him to his feet. Marcus stood beside him, expression cool as stone. Tanya took a trembling step forward. "What about me?" she squeaked. Dalton turned to her. "That depends." Her chin quivered. "On what?" Marcus answered before the sheriff could. "On whether you want to tell the truth or go down with him." Tanya's eyes widened, fear finally bursting through. The storm outside renewed its force, wind whipping through the yard. But for the first time in hours, maybe years, the storm inside me was beginning to settle. Because I had finally claimed something I didn't know I still had, my power. For the next several minutes, the world moved in fragments, flashes of motion, snatches of voices, the cold sting of rain against my cheeks. Dalton escorted Darren toward the patrol car, his hands cuffed, his shoulders slumped, but still radiating simmering anger. Marcus stood back, watching with unsettling composure, the kind of man who'd seen this scenario too many times to be moved by shouting or threats. Tanya remained frozen on the porch, arms wrapped tightly around herself, rain dripping from her chin. She looked less like a villain now, and more like someone who realized the foundation under her feet was nothing but sand. Caleb stayed close behind me. A quiet, solid presence, not interfering, but ready if anything shifted. And for a long moment, I simply stood there, watching the consequences finally catch up to the choices that had been chasing us all. Dalton returned from the car, wet hat dripping as he turned toward Tanya. "Ma'am," he said gently, "we need to talk." Tanya blinked fast, mascara bleeding down her cheeks. I didn't know it would go this far," she stammered. "Darren said it was small. He said his mother wouldn't miss the money. He said—" Marcus stepped forward. "What he told you," he said coldly, "does not change your involvement." He motioned to the forged documents. "Your signature is on one of these." Tanya's breath hitched. She looked at me. Really looked. And for the first time, her expression wasn't arrogant or annoyed or entitled. It was apologetic. "Mrs. Ward," she whispered, "I'm so sorry. I didn't think about what he was doing to you. I just wanted us to get ahead." My chest tightened with something ugly and conflicted, sympathy maybe, but too tangled with anger to surface fully. Caleb crossed his arms. Wanting a better life doesn't give anyone the right to strip someone else of theirs. Tanya shook her head, sobbing softly. "I was stupid. I should have stopped him. I should have—" Dalton raised a hand. "I'm not here to drag this out," he said. "You have two choices, Tanya. Tell the truth or be charged alongside Darren." Tanya nodded quickly, fear overtaking the last of her pride. "I'll talk," she said. "I'll tell everything." Marcus exchanged a glance with Dalton, one of acknowledgement, not sympathy. Dalton placed a steady hand on Tanya's arm. "I'll take your statement at the station. Not here." She followed him obediently toward his vehicle, a stark contrast to the way Darren had fought. And just before she got in, she turned back. Her eyes met mine. "Evelyn," she whispered, "he never deserved you." I said nothing, because what words existed for a truth like that? Dalton drove off with Tanya in the second cruiser, leaving the yard in near silence. Just rain and wind and the last echo of chaos. Darren sat in the back of the first patrol car, glowering through the window, but his shouting had stopped. The fight had drained out of him as quickly as the rainwater soaked into the ground. Marcus approached me once the cruisers pulled away. "Mrs. Ward," he said, voice softer now, "your son's actions, and your daughter-in-law's, will take time to unwind legally. But the good news is you will not be held responsible for wrongdoing you did not commit." My throat felt tight. "And the money?" I asked. Marcus straightened the sleeves of his coat. "That too can be corrected. With the proper affidavits and statements, it will be clear the funds were taken fraudulently." A breath I hadn't realized I was holding finally escaped me. "Thank you," I whispered. Marcus nodded once, a gesture of respect and closure. "I'll be in touch," he said. Then he walked off into the rain, got into his vehicle, and disappeared down the dark road. The yard was silent again, the kind of silence that isn't peaceful but hollow. The adrenaline drained out of my body all at once, leaving my hands shaking, my knees weak. I turned to Caleb, the man who had stepped between me and danger without hesitation. "My son," my voice cracked. "I don't know how it came to this." Caleb stepped closer, not touching me at first, just giving me a moment. Then he placed a warm, steady hand on my shoulder. "Evelyn," he said softly, "you didn't lose him today. You lost him a long time ago. Today, you just stopped letting him drag you down with him." The tears came then, silent at first, then heavy enough that I covered my face to hide them. But Caleb didn't let me crumble alone. He guided me gently toward his porch, away from the mud and the flashing memories. We stood under the overhang as the rain washed the rest of the storm down the road Darren had been taken on. "It's over," Caleb murmured. You're safe now." I breathed in slowly, the scent of wet pine and old wood filling my lungs. Safe. The world felt strange around that word, like a house being rebuilt plank by plank after years of rot, but somewhere inside me, beneath the grief and exhaustion, I felt a small spark. Not of joy, not yet, of possibility, but it wasn't over. Not yet. As Caleb guided me inside, he paused at the doorway. "Evelyn?" he said quietly. "Yes? There's something I haven't told you yet." He looked at me differently then. Not with caution, not with pity, with something heavier. "I knew your husband," he said again, the same words he'd spoken earlier, but now they sounded different, deeper. "And there's something he left behind that you don't know about." My breath hitched. "What sort of something?" Caleb exhaled slowly. "A letter," he said, holding my gaze. "For you." The world tipped beneath me. "A letter?" I whispered. "From Samuel?" "Yes." "Why didn't I ever get it?" Caleb's eyes softened, sad, regretful. "Because he asked me to give it to you when the moment was right." My heart pounded. "And that moment," I managed, barely breathing, "is now?" He nodded once. "Yes, now." Caleb closed the door softly behind us, shutting out the storm, the flashing lights, the shouting, the years of silent pain I'd carried alone. His house, warm, dim, smelling of cedar and old books, wrapped around me like a blanket I didn't know I needed. I stood near the kitchen table, hands trembling, heart still racing from everything that had just happened. But all of that fell away the moment Caleb repeated those words. A letter. From Samuel. I gripped the back of a chair for balance. "My Samuel?" The name felt fragile on my tongue, a memory that had survived everything but time. Caleb nodded. "Yes." I swallowed hard. I don't understand. Why would he leave a letter with you? Why didn't he give it to me himself?" Caleb didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked toward a small wooden cabinet near the far wall, dark oak, polished by age, with a brass key hanging from a hook beside it. He unlocked it slowly. Inside, I saw stacks of folded linens, old photo albums, and a single small tin box with faded paint and dented corners. Caleb lifted it gently, the way a man carries something sacred. He brought it to the table and set it down in front of me. "This belonged to him," he said softly. "He asked me to keep it safe." My breath caught. I reached out, running my fingers along the cool metal. The lid felt heavy, as if weighted with ghosts. Caleb stepped back to give me space. Hands shaking, I opened the box. Inside was a stack of photographs I hadn't seen in years. Samuel as a young man, laughing with Caleb, covered in sawdust from some long-ago project. Pictures of the two of them fishing, working, growing old together in friendship. And under the photos, a single envelope, cream paper, edges yellowed with time. My name written across the front in Samuel's unmistakable handwriting. Evelyn. My knees nearly buckled. I pressed the envelope to my chest, closing my eyes. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Caleb's voice softened. He wrote it during his last months. He knew he might not have the strength to say everything he needed to. Tears welled up, blurring the edges of everything around me. "But why didn't you give it to me when he passed?" Caleb hesitated, his expression folding into grief. "Because he told me not to," he said. "He asked me to wait until you reached the point where you needed it most." He swallowed, and tonight, I saw that moment arrive. I sank slowly into the chair. Caleb lowered himself into the one across from me, but said nothing. This moment was mine. With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. Samuel's handwriting, slanted, confident, familiar, filled the page. I began to read. "My dearest Evelyn, if you are reading this, it means Caleb did what I asked of him, and it means you are facing something I feared would come long after I was gone." My breath hitched. "I worry for you, sweetheart. Not because you are weak, but because you have always given more of yourself than anyone had a right to ask for. I wiped a tear from the corner of my eye. Our boy. He has a good heart buried somewhere in him, but life has a way of twisting people who refuse to face their own shadows. A chill ran through me. If he ever forgets how to love you, how to protect you, or how to treat you as the mother who gave him every piece of her soul, I need you to remember this one truth. I held my breath. You owe him nothing except the love you already gave. My hand flew to my mouth. Do not sacrifice yourself to save him from the consequences of his choices. You deserve to live the rest of your life in peace, in dignity, and with people who will treat you as the treasure you are. Tears poured freely now. And if ever you feel alone or lost or unsure of what to do next, Caleb will know how to help you. He's the best man I ever knew. I glanced up at Caleb, sitting quietly, eyes glistening. Live your life, Evelyn. Not the life others demand of you, not the life built on guilt or fear, the life you deserve. Your story is not over, not even close. The last line cracked my heart wide open. With all the love I still carry for you, your Samuel. I lowered the letter slowly as the room blurred around me. The ache in my chest was deep, but not hollow, full of love, memory, and a grief that felt strangely healing. Caleb reached across the table, placing his hand gently over mine. Samuel loved you more than anything, he said, and he wanted you to know you still have a future, a good one. I exhaled shakily. So what do I do now? I whispered. Caleb squeezed my hand, warm and steady. You start over, he said, and this time, you don't have to do it alone. The storm eased into a soft drizzle by the time the patrol cars disappeared down the long dirt road, their lights fading into a soft glow behind the trees. Inside Caleb's warm kitchen, the world felt strangely quiet, like everything that had tried to tear me apart had finally stopped to catch its breath. The letter from Samuel lay on the table in front of me, its edges smoothed by time, its words still trembling through my chest like a heartbeat I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't ready to fold it away. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Caleb poured 2 cups of tea, gentle, fragrant, steadying, and slid one toward me. I wrapped my hands around the cup, letting the warmth spread into my palms. He sat across from me with the ease of someone who had nothing left to rush toward, or run from. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The quiet wasn't heavy. It was alive, comfortable, soft. Finally, Caleb broke it. Evelyn, he said, voice low, you need a place to stay. You need time, and you need to heal. The word heal hit deeper than expected. I'd spent so long surviving, stretching, bending, swallowing pain, that healing felt like a luxury I didn't deserve. I don't want to be a burden, I whispered. His eyebrows drew together gently. You aren't, he said. Not now, not ever. The firmness in his voice silenced the argument before it could form. This house is too big for one old man, he added. You'd be doing me a favor. I let out a soft, broken laugh. Caleb, you're 68. You're not an old man. He shrugged with a smirk. My knees disagree. Despite everything, despite the heartbreak, the arrest, the fear, the shock, I found myself smiling, really smiling, for the first time in what felt like years. I took a deep breath. Thank you, I whispered. Caleb nodded as if he'd been waiting for the words. You don't have to decide anything tonight, he said. Just rest. Start fresh in the morning. I woke to the smell of pancakes and the sound of birds outside the window, an unfamiliar peace that felt like walking into someone else's dream. The guest room was small but warm, decorated with quilts Caleb's late wife had sewn. Sunlight crept through the curtains, painting soft gold across the wooden floor. When I entered the kitchen, Caleb was flipping pancakes with surprising dexterity. Morning, he said, glancing over his shoulder. You're right on time. Pancakes don't wait for anyone. I sat at the table, letting the normalcy sink into me like sunlight soaking into cold soil. After breakfast, we drove into town in his old pickup, a creaking, loyal thing that had probably been alive longer than some politicians. At the sheriff's office, paperwork flowed like water: statements, affidavits, financial freezes, identity protections. Marcus arrived with a folder full of forms, each one a small piece of justice being restored. It was overwhelming, but Caleb stayed beside me through every signature. When it was all done, Sheriff Dalton walked us to the exit. "You did the right thing, Mrs. Ward," he said. "You saved yourself, and you might have saved your son from becoming something even worse." I nodded, a mixture of pain and acceptance settling in my chest. The days that followed were slow and gentle. Caleb built a fire each evening. I cooked meals for the first time in months without being criticized or rushed. Sometimes we talked for hours. Sometimes we didn't talk at all, and the silence was beautiful. The shack Darren had left me in was condemned by the county. My accounts were protected, and the forged documents were officially under investigation. Tanya cooperated fully with authorities, terrified of prison. Darren fought, then broke, then fell silent. For the first time in my life, my future no longer depended on someone else's mercy. One evening, as Caleb and I sat on the porch, watching the fireflies drift through the trees, he said quietly, "You know, Samuel once told me that if anything ever happened to him, I should keep an eye on you." My breath hitched. He said you were the strongest person he'd ever met, but also the one most likely to hide your pain to keep others comfortable. My eyes stung. "He worried," Caleb continued, "that someday someone might take advantage of that kindness. He made me promise I wouldn't let that happen." I swallowed hard. "And you kept that promise," I whispered. He nodded. "I did, and I'll keep it as long as you let me." Heat rose to my face, a warmth I hadn't felt since Samuel died. The wind rustled through the trees, gentle and steady. I leaned back in my chair, letting the calm settle into my bones. "Caleb," I said softly. "Yes? I think I'd like to stay a while." He smiled, a slow, relieved smile that said more than words ever could. "You stay as long as you want, Evelyn. This house has room, and so do I." The sun dipped below the horizon, and for the first time since Samuel passed, the world didn't feel like a place I had to navigate alone. It felt like a place where I could start again, a place where I could breathe, a place where healing wasn't just possible. It was already happening, and maybe, just maybe, the life I never planned was the one waiting for me all along.